The house felt different when everyone was gone. Not bad different, just empty in a way that made every sound louder than it should be. I'd been living back at home for about 8 months after landing a job downtown. Not my proudest moment as a 24-year-old, but rent in the city was brutal and my parents didn't mind. The arrangement worked well enough. They had their routines, I had mine, and we crossed paths mostly at dinner. That Saturday night, I had the whole place to myself. Mum and Dad were at their cabin upstate for the long weekend, and my sister Jenna was staying at her boyfriend's apartment across town. She'd moved out 2 years ago, but still kept her old room exactly as she'd left it, like a museum of her teenage years. I'd ordered Thai food and was halfway through a documentary about deep-sea creatures when I realised how late it had gotten, almost midnight. I shut everything down and headed upstairs, my footsteps echoing in the quiet. My bedroom was on the second floor, right above the kitchen. Small space, but it had been mine since I was 12. I just changed into sweatpants and was about to plug in my phone when I heard it. A mechanical whirring sound, low and grinding. The garage door was opening. For a few seconds, I just stood there holding my phone, trying to logic my way through it. Maybe Mom had forgotten something. Maybe Dad needed a tool for the cabin. Maybe the door opener was malfunctioning. But they'd left Friday morning, 36 hours ago, and they'd specifically said they weren't coming back until Monday evening. I moved to my window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see down into the driveway. The garage door was fully open now, the interior swallowed in darkness. Our motion sensor light should have clicked on, but it stayed dead. Either the bulb had burned out, or someone had disabled it. No car pulled in, no headlights, nothing. My heart started doing that thing where it beats so hard you can feel it in your throat. I grabbed my phone and pulled up Mom's contact, but my thumb hovered over the call button. What if I was overreacting? What if it really was just a malfunction? Then I heard the door between the garage and the kitchen open, the one that squeaks because Dad keeps forgetting to oil the hinges. Someone was inside the house. I killed the lights in my room and moved away from the window. My mind raced through options. Call the police? Hide? The bedroom door didn't have a lock. There was no way to barricade it without making noise. From downstairs came the sound of footsteps, multiple sets, and voices, low and urgent, like they were coordinating something. I called 911 with shaking hands, whispering into the phone as I backed into my closet. The operator told me units were on the way, and to stay hidden, stay quiet, do not engage. Her voice was calm and professional, but it did nothing to slow my pulse. The footsteps were moving through the first floor now. I could track them by the creaking floorboards. Kitchen, dining room, living room. They were searching for something, or maybe just taking inventory before they started loading up. A crash from downstairs. Glass breaking. Then laughter, quick and mean. I thought about Jenna's room down the hall. She kept some jewellery in there, nothing expensive but sentimental. Mom's office was on the first floor with her laptop and Dad's camera equipment. Easy targets. Part of me hoped they'd just take what they wanted and leave, but then the footsteps started coming up the stairs. Oh, Mom. I pressed myself further back into the closet, wedging between winter coats and old boxes. My phone was still connected to the operator, but I'd muted my end. Through the crack in the door, I could see my dark bedroom and the faint glow of streetlight coming through the window. A shadow passed in the hallway outside, then another. They were checking the rooms. The first voice, rough and impatient, said something about grabbing what's upstairs, while another told him to hurry the hell up. A flashlight beam cut through under my door, sliding over the carpet. I held my breath, hands shaking so hard the clothes hangers beside me rattled. The doorknob turned. One of them opened my door fully and stepped inside. I could hear the slow, careful creak of his boots against the floorboards. He was breathing through his nose, short and steady, scanning. The flashlight swept across my desk, my bed, the dresser, then paused on the closet. He stepped closer. I could hear the sound of fabric brushing his jacket as he reached for the handle. Then suddenly, a voice from the hallway. "Yo man, cops, lights outside." The beam swung away instantly. Footsteps thundered back down the stairs, one of them shouting to the others. I stayed frozen where I was, barely breathing, while the sound of doors slamming and engines revving echoed through the night. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder every second. Through the thin crack of the closet door, I saw the flicker of red and blue lights spill through my bedroom window. I didn't move until I heard heavy boots on the porch and someone pounding on the front door shouting, "Police!" I unmuted the phone just long enough to whisper that I was upstairs before stepping out of the closet, legs barely working beneath me. That's when I realised one of them had dropped something, a crowbar, lying just a few feet from my bed. The door to my room swung open slowly. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping left to right. I held my breath, trying to make myself as small as possible. "This one looks empty," a voice said. Male, young, maybe late 20s. Check the dresser anyway. 2 figures entered. I could only see their silhouettes, backlit by the hallway light they'd turned on. One went straight for my dresser and started yanking drawers open, dumping contents onto the floor. The other one stood in the doorway like he was keeping watch. The one at the dresser found my laptop on the desk and tucked it under his arm. Then he noticed my phone charger plugged into the wall, the cord dangling empty. "Hey," he said, his voice changing. "Where's the phone?" They both went still. "Someone's here," the one in the doorway said. I don't know what made me do it. Panic, maybe, or some stupid instinct that kicked in when I realised they'd figured it out. I burst out of the closet and ran straight at the guy in the doorway, hitting him with my shoulder before he could react. He stumbled backward into the hallway and I kept moving, heading for the stairs. I almost made it. The second guy grabbed my shirt from behind and yanked me back hard. I lost my footing and went down, hitting the floor with my shoulder. Pain shot through my arm, but I tried to scramble up anyway. That's when I saw the knife. He didn't say anything, just came at me with the blade held low and ready. I rolled to the side and his first swing missed, but I was trapped between him and the wall. The other guy was getting up from the hallway, cursing and angry now. Sirens. Distant, but getting closer. The guy with the knife heard them too. He froze for a second, looking toward the window, then back at me. Something shifted in his eyes. A calculation. "Go," the other one hissed from the hallway. "We gotta go now." They ran. I heard them thundering down the stairs, heard the back door slam open. By the time I got to my feet and made it to the window, they were already disappearing into the wooded lot behind our house. The police found me sitting on the front porch when they arrived 3 minutes later. I gave them the whole story, described the 2 men as best I could, showed them the ransacked bedroom. They searched the property and the surrounding area but found nothing. Mum and Dad came home that night instead of Monday. Jenna showed up an hour after them. We all sat in the living room until dawn, not really talking, just being together in the house that suddenly felt different. The next few days were a blur of police visits and insurance paperwork. The detective said the men probably targeted our neighbourhood after seeing posts about people going away for the long weekend. They thought maybe the same crew had hit a few houses nearby. Forensics didn't find much. A partial boot print near the garage door. Fingerprints that didn't match anyone in the system. That was it. It took a while before I could sleep in my room again. For the first week, I stayed on the couch downstairs, the TV on low volume all night. Every creak, every gust of wind against the windows made me tense up. I kept replaying the sound of that garage door, opening the slow grind of the chain pulling it up, and the moment I realised it wasn't supposed to be happening. A month later, an officer called to say they had a lead. A pawn shop 2 towns over had reported someone trying to sell a camera that matched my dad's serial number, but by the time they got there, the men were gone. Security footage caught one face clearly, but he was still unidentified. After that, the case went quiet. We changed the locks, installed cameras, got a full security system. Dad even reinforced the door between the garage and the kitchen. Still, I check that one twice every night before bed. Old habit now. Sometimes, when I'm the last one awake, I'll stand at the top of the stairs and listen. The house settles, pipes hum, the fridge clicks on and off. All normal sounds. But every once in a while, I swear I hear footsteps downstairs, slow, measured, almost like someone pacing. I tell myself it's nothing. Probably just the old floorboards shifting under the weight of time, but I still keep my phone close, volume turned all the way up, just in case I ever hear that garage door again. Moving back home wasn't part of the plan. At 31, I'd imagined myself somewhere else by now. But life has a way of rearranging your priorities, especially when your mother starts calling you 3 times a week because she can't remember if she took her medication. Dad passed away 4 years ago, and Mum had been managing okay on her own. Until she wasn't. The first fall happened in March. She'd been reaching for something on a high shelf and lost her balance. Bruised her hip badly enough that I drove 2 hours to take her to urgent care. The second fall was worse. Fractured wrist. 6 weeks in a cast, so I gave up my apartment in the city, found a ground floor rental about 15 minutes from her place, and started working remotely. It wasn't ideal, but it was necessary. Mum insisted she was fine, that I was overreacting, that she'd been managing just fine for 73 years and didn't need a babysitter now. But I'd seen the fear in her eyes after that second fall. The way she grabbed my hand in the emergency room and held on just a little too tight. My new place was small but decent. A 1-bedroom cottage-style house with a tiny backyard and neighbours who kept to themselves. I'd been there about 5 months when the call came. It was a Tuesday evening just after 9. I was halfway through folding laundry when my phone rang with a local number I didn't recognise. The woman's voice was professional and calm, the kind of tone you'd expect from someone who delivers bad news regularly. "Is this Rebecca Chandler? I'm calling from Mercy General Hospital. Your mother, Patricia Chandler, was brought into our emergency department about 40 minutes ago." My stomach dropped. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She had a fall at home. A neighbour found her and called an ambulance. She's conscious and stable, but she's asking for you. She hit her head during the fall, so we're monitoring her closely." The woman knew everything. Mom's full name, her address, even mentioned the medication she takes for her blood pressure. She knew about the previous falls, the orthopedic appointments, things that felt too specific to be fake. "I'm on my way," I said, already grabbing my keys. "Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. I didn't lock the door behind me, didn't turn off the lights, didn't think about anything except getting to my mother. The drive was a blur of red lights and worst-case scenarios. I kept seeing her lying on the kitchen floor, alone and scared. Kept thinking about how I should have insisted she move in with me, should have been more forceful about the medical alert system. Mercy General's emergency entrance was bright and sterile. I ran up to the reception desk, breathless. "Patricia Chandler," I said. "My mother. She was brought in about an hour ago after a fall." The nurse typed into her computer, frowned, typed again. "I don't see anyone by that name in our system tonight." I felt the floor tilt under my feet. "That's impossible. I just got a call from someone here. They told me she'd been admitted. She fell and hit her head." The nurse's expression shifted from confused to concerned. "Ma'am, I've been at this desk all evening. We haven't had any falls brought in tonight, and we definitely don't have a Patricia Chandler registered." My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Mom's number. It rang 4 times. 5, 6. Then her sleepy voice answered. "Rebecca, what's wrong? It's after 10. Mom, are you okay? You're at home?" "Of course I'm at home. Where else would I be?" "Are you all right?" I told her it was nothing. Just checking in. Told her to go back to sleep. Then I stood in that bright emergency room hallway and felt something cold settle in my chest. Someone had lied to get me out of my house. I drove back faster than I should have, my mind racing through possibilities. The door looked exactly as I'd left it, still unlocked. For half a second, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Then I stepped inside, and saw the couch cushions on the floor. They'd been thorough. My laptop was gone from the kitchen table. The TV was missing from the wall mount, leaving only dangling cables. My small jewellery box had been emptied, including my grandmother's wedding ring. But it was the other things that made my skin crawl. Picture frames on the mantel stood empty. They'd taken the photos but left the frames behind. Every single family picture, pulled out and stolen. My passport was gone from the bedroom drawer. Prescription bottles from the bathroom medicine cabinet, emptied and missing. In my mother's old recipe box, which I kept on a shelf in the kitchen, they'd taken specific recipe cards. The ones written in her handwriting, they'd left the printed ones. On my desk, a stack of old birthday cards from my father was gone. Personal letters, childhood photos, my birth certificate, my college diploma all taken. The TV and laptop felt like cover. What they'd really wanted were pieces of my life. I called the police with shaking hands. 2 officers showed up 20 minutes later and took my statement. I told them everything about the call, the hospital, how specific the information had been. Whoever called you knew a lot about your personal life, the older officer said, walking through my ransacked bedroom. This wasn't random, this was targeted. But they had no leads, no fingerprints, no security cameras on my street. They took notes and gave me a case number and told me to call if I thought of anything else. After they left, I sat on my stripped couch and tried to think of who could have known those things about my mother. Her doctor? A neighbour? Someone from her church group? The list was too long, and none of it made sense. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the house made me flinch. Around 2 a.m, I got up to double-check the doors again, even though I'd already locked them twice. The silence felt heavy, unnatural. I kept thinking about the empty frames, about the fact that someone had held my family photos in their hands and chosen to take them. That wasn't about money. That was personal. I took the rest of the week off work, cleaned what I could, replaced what I couldn't. Every missing item made me realise how much I'd taken my sense of safety for granted. I didn't tell my mother what really happened. I just said someone broke in and took a few electronics. She was already fragile, already forgetful. I couldn't add fear to that. Still, I caught myself staring at her house when I visited, wondering if someone had been there too. Wondering what they wanted from us. I installed cameras the next day. Front door, back door, motion-activated floodlights, changed all my locks, started parking in the garage instead of the driveway, but the feeling didn't go away. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, local postmark. Inside was a single photograph, one of the family photos they'd stolen from my house. The one from my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. On the back, in handwriting, I didn't recognise. "Tell Patricia we said hello." I took it straight to the police. They opened an investigation, but admitted they had little to go on. The letter had been dropped in a public mailbox. No DNA, no prints, just that one sentence. Mom didn't remember telling anyone specific about her medical history or my contact information. But she was social, active in her community, always chatting with neighbours and people at the grocery store. It could have been anyone. I moved her in with me 2 months later. She fought it at first, insisted she was fine on her own, that I was letting fear control my life. I didn't argue. I just packed her things quietly and told her it was temporary. But I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, thinking about that voice on the phone. How calm she'd sounded, how much she'd known. The cameras never caught anything. The person who sent the letter never reached out again. But sometimes, when I'm getting the mail or taking out the trash, I feel eyes on me and I wonder who's watching, what they're waiting for, whether that phone call was just the beginning. The house on Maple Street wasn't much to look at from the outside. Single-story ranch style, faded blue siding, a lawn that always looked like it needed mowing no matter how often I cut it. But the rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask too many questions, which suited me fine after the divorce. I'd been there about 14 months when it happened. Long enough to feel settled, to have my routines down. Morning coffee on the back porch, evenings watching whatever was on TV, the kind of quiet, unremarkable life I'd been craving after everything fell apart with Miranda. The neighbourhood was the definition of suburban nothing. Families with kids, retirees who waved from their driveways, the occasional dog walker. My next door neighbour was a widow named Mrs. Chen, who baked too much and brought me leftovers every Sunday. Nice, normal, boring. Exactly what I needed. It was a Wednesday night in late September when someone started hammering on my front door. Not knocking hammering. The kind of aggressive pounding that makes you think someone's either dying or trying to break the door down. I was in my boxers and a t-shirt halfway to bed when it started. The clock on the microwave read 11:47. Through the peephole, I could see a figure on the porch, but the overhead light had burned out 2 weeks ago, and I hadn't replaced it yet. Just a silhouette, moving erratically. For a minute, I just stood there, hand on the deadbolt, debating if I should even say anything. When the pounding started again, harder this time, I yelled, "Who is it?" The voice that came back was muffled, but angry. "Open the door!" I froze. Male voice, mid-30s maybe. I didn't recognise it. "You got the wrong house," I said. He kept shouting something, words I couldn't quite catch, and then started pacing, muttering. Against my better judgment, I undid the latch halfway and opened the door, leaving the chain lock engaged. The man on my porch looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mid-30s, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled button-down and jeans with grass stains on the knees. His hair stuck up in all directions, and his eyes had this wild, unfocused look that immediately put me on edge. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He stopped pacing and stared at me like I'd just said something absurd. "Help me? This is my house. What are you doing in my house?" I almost laughed. Thought it was some drunk confusion, wrong address situation. But something in the way he said it, dead serious, almost desperate, made me hesitate. "I think you've got the wrong place, man. I've been renting here for over a year." His expression twisted with rage. "Wrong place? I've lived here for 3 years. The bedroom closet has a broken shelf on the left side. The bathroom sink drains slow because there's a clog in the pipe behind the wall. The kitchen window sticks when you try to open it past halfway." My mouth went dry. Those things were all true. Every single one. "The back fence has a loose post on the corner near the alley," he continued, voice rising. "The attic access is in the hallway ceiling. There's a water stain on the garage floor shaped like Texas because the water heater leaked 2 years ago. I hadn't even noticed the garage stain until last month." "Who are you?" I managed to ask. He pulled a folded paper from his back pocket and pressed it against the screen door. It looked like a lease agreement, official, letterhead, signatures, everything. His name was listed as Marcus Wellman. The address was mine. The dates showed a lease from 3 years ago. "That's impossible," I said, but my voice cracked halfway through. "My landlord never mentioned a previous tenant named Marcus." "Because I'm not previous," he shot back. "I'm current. You're the one who shouldn't be here." He pulled out his phone, hands shaking, and started swiping through photos. Then he turned the screen toward me. The first picture showed him sitting on my couch, the same brown leather couch I'd bought, used when I moved in. He was smiling at the camera, a beer in his hand, a baseball game on the TV behind him. "That's from June," he said. The next photo showed him in my kitchen, cooking at the stove. Same white cabinets, same chipped backsplash. My kitchen. "That's from July 4th. I made ribs." More photos. Him in the bedroom, him in the bathroom, him sitting at my small dining table with 3 other people I didn't recognise. All laughing, a pizza box open between them. "August 15th, he said quietly. "Game night." I felt like the air in the house changed heavy, tight. My brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. "I was here on all those dates," I said. "I've been here every day for 14 months. There's no way." "Then how do I have these pictures?" I stared at him. at the phone, at my own living room, frozen on the screen. The couch, the walls, even the crooked picture frame. Behind him, it was all exactly the same. "I don't know," I finally said, and the words felt weak leaving my mouth. He took a step closer, pressing the door with his palm. "You need to get out. Right now." I backed up instinctively. "Look, whatever this is, you need to leave. I'll call the landlord in the morning and—" He cut me off, voice breaking. "You don't get it. I have nowhere else to go. This is my home." His eyes flicked past me, scanning the hallway behind. For a second, I thought he might actually try to force his way in. "Marcus, right?" I said quickly. "Listen, I don't want trouble. Just go home, and I'll figure this out tomorrow, okay?" He stared for a long moment, chest heaving, then shoved the paper back into his pocket. "I am home," he said, and then he turned and walked off the porch into the dark. I stood there with my hand still on the door, trying to process what just happened. When I finally shut it and locked every bolt, my hands were shaking. I checked the windows twice before going to bed, but sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos, my house, my furniture, my life with someone else in it. "I'm calling the police," I said, reaching for my phone on the hall table. His demeanour shifted instantly. The manic energy drained out of him and his face went blank. "Sure, call them. They'll straighten this out." He stepped back from the door, hands raised in a gesture of compliance. "I'll wait right here." Then he walked off the porch and disappeared into the darkness of the front yard. I stood there with my phone in my hand, watching the empty space where he'd been. Called 911 and explained the situation as calmly as I could. Crazy person at my door claiming to live in my house, showing me fake photos. The dispatcher said units were on the way. The police arrived 12 minutes later, 2 officers, both looking bored and tired. I told them everything, described Marcus, showed them where he'd been standing, mentioned the photos and the lease agreement. They walked the perimeter of the house with flashlights, checked the backyard, looked in my garage, found nothing. "Probably just someone having a mental health crisis," the younger officer said. "As long as they're gone, you should be fine. Lock your doors, maybe get a security camera. Call us if they come back." They left. I stood in my living room for a long time after that, staring at my couch, wondering if those photos had been real, wondering if I was the one losing my mind. 2 weeks passed. Nothing happened. I almost convinced myself it had been some elaborate scam, some con I didn't fully understand. Then I came home from work one Thursday and found my front door unlocked. The house had been searched, not robbed, searched. Every drawer opened, every cabinet emptied, closets pulled apart. But nothing was missing. My TV was still mounted on the wall. My laptop sat untouched on the coffee table. Even my wallet, left on the kitchen counter that morning, was exactly where I'd placed it. They'd been looking for something specific. The police came back, took a report, dusted for prints. Found nothing useful. No signs of forced entry, which meant whoever broke in had a key. They suggested I change the locks immediately. My landlord, a retired dentist named Howard Marsh, came by the next day with a locksmith. I asked him about Marcus Wellman while the locks were being changed. "Never heard of him," Howard said, frowning. "I've owned this house for 22 years. Rented it to a nice couple before you, but they moved to Arizona. Before that, it was empty for about 6 months while I did renovations. Never had anyone named Marcus." I showed him a screenshot I'd managed to take of one of the photos on Marcus's phone, him sitting on my couch. Howard stared at it for a long time. "I don't recognise him. And that couch, that's the couch you bought, right?" "From Craigslist." I nodded. "So how does he have a picture of himself sitting on furniture you own, in my house, on a date when you were living here?" We both knew there was no good answer to that question. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The refrigerator humming, the pipes knocking, a car door slamming somewhere down the street. Around 3 a.m, I got up to check the locks again. When I passed the living room, something caught my eye. The picture frame on the bookshelf, the one with a photo of me and my dog at the park, was flipped backward. I hadn't noticed it earlier. When I picked it up, I saw a folded piece of paper tucked behind it. It was a printed photo. Marcus again. Same living room, same couch. But this time, he wasn't smiling. He was sitting forward, elbows on his knees, staring straight at the camera like he knew who would be looking. I packed a bag and left before sunrise, slept in a motel that night and called a moving company the next morning. I moved out 6 weeks later. Broke the lease, forfeited my deposit, found a studio apartment on the other side of town with a doorman and security cameras everywhere, but sometimes I still think about those photos. About Marcus standing on my porch, insisting with absolute conviction that I was the intruder in his home. About how certain he seemed, how genuine his confusion appeared. And I wonder if maybe, somehow, we were both right. If there's something about that house on Maple Street that doesn't want to choose between its past and its present. I don't believe in that kind of thing. But I've stopped trying to rationalise what happened. Because rationalisation requires logic, and there was nothing logical about any of it.